The Second World War did not begin with an attack on the United States. It did not begin with an attack on France. It did not begin with an attack on the UK by Nazi Germany. It began first with Czechoslovakia, then with Poland. Proxy war. Fight the war on somebody else's turf. JFK learned the same lesson during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Soviets decided that we'll just plant ballistic missiles off the coast of Florida in Cuba, the newly formed communist state. Using other regimes to be proxy warriors is a hundreds of years old strategy. The Chinese have been employing it very well. We accuse Pakistan of proxy war by claiming that they use terrorism. The real proxy war is China using Pakistan. Give them the missiles, give them the tanks, give them the aircraft, and give them nuclear weapons technology to constantly be a thorn on India's side. If Pakistan had not got Chinese nukes, they would not be able to do 10% of what they are able to get away with right now. What Pakistan deployment against India manufactured in China, the same logic is North Korea. Give them the missiles, give them nuclear weapons technology. In fact, let them source the nuclear weapons technology from Pakistan via China, and let the Pakistanis source the missiles from North Korea via China. Very cozy club. And then for decades, let them be a perennial problem for Japan. North Korea launches missile near Japan. Global pandemic crisis. North Korea does nuclear test. Donald Trump suddenly wants to do all sorts of summit meetings with North Korea because of that. Now at this point of time, we are being told that Kim Jong-un is perhaps dead. We are also being told that a senior team from the Chinese Communist Party is either en route or has arrived in Pyongyang. What are they doing there? The only purpose they are serving there is not to help in dealing with the body of Kim Jong-un, to arbitrate the succession of who takes over. For the principal same purpose that you want North Korea to stay active as a problem for the Americans and the Japanese, so they are having to be distracted from your real aim, which is probably in the South China Sea and Taiwan. The reality of this, Gautam Mukherjee, of how China uses North Korea is now so important because God knows what they are planning in the South China Sea and Taiwan right now.
The point is that they are running a very complex operation because they are irritating too many people at the same time. One of the things that, when we are talking about the export of COVID-19 as a deliberate strategy, is that when the manufacturing leaves or partially leaves China and goes to neighboring countries in the South China Sea, they still come under the Chinese strategic umbrella. It's sort of a USSR across the little pond. Similarly, in terms of trying to control North Korea, there will be two threads happening, which under Kim, who's just died perhaps, it didn't work out, but his sister, if she succeeds, and is likely because that is blood, as opposed to the wife, I doubt if it will be an uncle or a general or some such. If that were to happen, the chances of reunification of the Koreas is not impossible to contemplate. They have been trying to do a little of that. I'm sure China doesn't like it too much, but if we look at the Chinese economy, it is horribly dependent on exports or joint ventures and mining and resources from outside of China. It is not in the same bracket.
You're bang on. The last thing they want is reunification, right? Because let's face it.
Right. There's that, and I'd like to say one more thing.
Yes.
Their attitude reminds me a lot of Shinto Japan when they decided to join the Axis and take on everybody in the Pacific, starting with Pearl Harbor, which was the end of them, in a manner of speaking.
Okay.
So,
now,
today everybody's gone nuclear, and they've used a form of bio warfare. But, this is not the end of the story.
But it's the beginning, because the premise which I began with remains. The Chinese like to use North Korea against Japan and the US, just like they use Pakistan against us. Keep them busy with all sorts of shenanigans. Ambassador Goyal joining us on the broadcast. Ambassador Goyal, now if it is true, and we don't know, maybe we won't know for weeks, if Kim Jong-un is indeed dead, why in the world would a Chinese team be headed to Pyongyang?
Rishabh, first of all, I'm not quite sure that a medic team would have gone to Pyongyang without having any idea of what actually is needed there in terms of medical support. My own guess, even though it remains very speculative at this time, is my own guess is that Kim Jong-un is very, very sick from whatever it is. He's very, very ill, probably fatal. And the medic team has gone there to basically assess, because please do remember that North Korea has depended upon China for its highest leaders for this kind of medical support for several decades now, ever since North Korea came into being. So the medic team must have gone there to really assess as to what can be done. And even if it is fatal and Kim Jong-un passes away, the struggle for succession may not be so intense as we believe it to be. I'm quite certain that Kim Jong-un would have identified person to succeed him, and we hear the name of his sister who often accompanies him. Now the issue really would be that under the circumstances, what kind of a role would China play in the succession, and what kind of relations we can expect between China and North Korea. Now, if you recall that ever since Kim Jong-un became the president of North Korea, the supreme leader, Chinese role has not been that kind of strong control as it used to be before. For example, before even the talks with Trump began, China was not consulted. Xi Jinping, in fact, after there were talks between the two, Xi Jinping, for the first time, he undertook a visit to China, to North Korea, if you remember. Therefore, to think that North Korea would forever remain under the umbrella of China, I think is a bit of too simplistic to assume. We need to wait and watch, see what happens, and reunification of forces.
I don't want to spend, Ambassador, my entire day thinking about conspiracy
Chinese
theories.
control of North Korea.
But Kim Jong-un, who suddenly wants to hold summit meetings with Donald Trump, a few months later, I'm told he's got heart disease, maybe, who knows what he's got, is either dead or fatally ill, Professor Nalapat. And not only a medical team, but including, we are told, senior Chinese Communist Party leaders are heading into Pyongyang. The reason for that is that it is more important for China, who controls North Korea, than perhaps it is for the North Koreans themselves.
Well, Rishabh, I'd like to say that, you were mentioning the theory of the proxy nuclear state. This theory was enunciated about 25 years ago by India's first professor of geopolitics. I forget the name, but it was enunciated by him. Now, I want to say, so far as Kim Jong-un is concerned, the information I am getting from people who are reasonably reliable about that particular place, and I mean, this is information I am getting, may or may not be true, is that there was actually an assassination attempt by a very unexpected source, which probably means people who are very close to him, and that he is in a critical condition, and that the Chinese have sent doctors. I'm sure they have sent other people as well, political people as well. I'm very certain they would have done that. But many of them are also doctors. And yes, you're right. His sister is very much trusted by Supreme Commander Kim. And if there is a smooth succession, then she will come in case something happens to him. But if it is true that a very close-knit band of people are responsible for trying to have assassinated him, that means there is a split inside the North Korean core hierarchy. And then, frankly, if something happens to the Supreme Commander, well, everything is up for grabs. But what I was told was, it's not an illness, it's an assassination attempt.
Okay, in this regard, what should we be worried about, sir? Because as I mentioned, before North Korea becomes a distraction and we simply then forget about what's happening in the South China Sea and Taiwan.
Well, I think we should be worried about North Korea in a sense, the governance structures disintegrating and going to war with each other, because North Korea has a lot of nuclear capacity. It was built up by help from outside. Not only one country, but in fact, two countries helped North Korea quite a lot, two big countries. But the reality is that if that happens, then this whole question about a nuclear bazaar will become real. Kim Jong-un, whatever is false, is basically in control of the country. If something happens to him and there's chaos and not a smooth succession, then you might find a similar situation as what people are afraid of in Pakistan. That if Pakistan splinters,
what happens to the nukes?
You have a nuclear market, you have a nuclear bazaar.
Yeah, and open to the first trader. Sumit Peer, the other concern is that if there are now exacerbated tensions in the Korean Peninsula because of a murky succession or a complicated succession, or the Chinese fiddling about once again, and they are going to try to leverage whoever the new leader of North Korea is going to be, try to pressure him or her. And if there is a problem in the Korean Peninsula, that creates the perfect smoke screen for China to move in on the South China Sea, perhaps to even do something in Taiwan.
Rishabh, a couple of points here. First of all, what China is doing, it's not diplomacy of pressure. I call it a diplomacy of extortion. They're literally paying these people, Pakistan and North Korea, to trouble the people around. Now, what has happened in North Korea is very interesting. What makes Chinese government teams, so Communist Party leaders and doctors, to go there? Something is definitely wrong with Kim. What Professor Nagpal said, maybe assassination. Now, we know the next in command is the sister. But what China wants right now, we cannot forget the American influence. We cannot forget CIA is doing nothing there. We cannot see Western powers are doing nothing there. China is worried to get the maximum control of North Korea at that point of time. They want to install somebody as good as a Queen Elizabeth in North Korea, who is the ceremonial head, but all the power will move to the Communist Party of China. By that way, they control all the nukes. By that way, the proximity with the Pakistan increase. By that way, they increase their influence in the Korean Peninsula. And Rishabh, two important developments. Recently, they have shot one Philippines fishing boat and they shot one Vietnamese fishing boat without any reason in South China Sea. With all this COVID crisis happening, just started shooting the fishing boats. So that talks about Chinese new aggression. And you look at with the Korean perspective, they are there to gain more and more power, increase the influence to the Korean Peninsula, what Professor Maru Nagpal rightly said. And one last thing, Rishabh, I missed on the last debate was, now India needs to really rethink on Chinese 5G. Because 5G is going to be the biggest game changer in the
there has
future
to be no
economies.
think.
With
Rethink,
these things,
forget it. There
you
has to
have
be
really,
no
really
think.
think.
There has to be no thing.
5G cannot be from China.
Let's not even
5G
think
cannot come.
how they managed to get into the trials.
5G cannot come from China.
But I think pretty much everybody will be in consensus that there is no think, forget the rethink. Let me quickly open Ambassador Goyal once again. Ambassador Goyal, the problem here is that we know that the Chinese might have certain interests in North Korea, but they have very specific enunciated interests in the South China Sea and Taiwan. And there is now an increasing risk that if things heat up in the Korean Peninsula, that becomes the global distraction when China will really be up to no good elsewhere.
Well, what I do foresee now is that please do remember that the peace talks, if I can call them peace talks, between North Korea and South Korea began with the initiative taken by the South Korean side. And I'm quite sure that with this kind of a development in North Korea, South Korea is going to be very interested in making sure that the situation does not blow out of control and destabilize the region. I don't think at the moment South Korea is interested in the reunification of the kind of a political thing. I think they'll be more interested in kind of an economic collaboration rather than political thing for the time being. With this, we will have a situation where USA will be coming into a direct contest with China in the region for the influence in North Korea or the Korean Peninsula. I think the situation is getting very, very murky, will become very murky really indeed. It not only just Taiwan and South China Seas, but the whole peninsular politics. So we need to basically, and given the kind of the war of words that is already going on between US and China, it is going to
No,
be
it's already
further
happened. The
exacerbated.
US,
So I
you
think
know,
we
jumping
need
in on
to
ASEAN.
basically wait and watch
Suddenly,
and
Mekong Delta has become
Absolutely.
become an issue for Mike Pompeo. Professor Nalapat,
Absolutely.
before I get Gautam Mukherjee back
Absolutely.
into this conversation. Now, the first thing when there is regime change in North Korea, the new person comes and does is that they start doing nuclear tests and they shoot off a couple of missiles somewhere near the Sea of Japan. Now, if they start doing these kind of things, you're going to see some exacerbated tension. My real concern, and I keep focusing back on this, is that if this becomes a sideshow, do we then lose focus on Taiwan and what's happening in the South China Sea?
Look, Rishabh, 2021 is the year, the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. I think the CCP is going to have a very hard-nosed discussion about Taiwan and ascertain as to what happened to its tactics till now and what should be done in the future. And my guess is they're going to decide that, look, the only solution is to take over Taiwan by force of military power. Now, the Chinese have been building up their armed forces in that particular theater very significantly. Also in the Indian Ocean, very significantly. As of now, the US military is stronger globally. But the Chinese are not interested so far in the world. They're interested in the limited theaters. And definitely in the, in the Indo-Pacific, especially on the Chinese side of the Indo-Pacific, they are now in a position where they can challenge the Americans. Another 5 or 6 years, they may say, all right, let's try and take over Taiwan. My guess is that decision to use force or not will be taken sometime next year.
Sometime next year, and by sometime next year, at least parts of the South China Sea they would like to happily claim. General Parehar, again, I'm just trying to highlight this. My concern with North Korea is that the first thing that any regime change, they start doing nuclear tests or they start firing missiles, over Japan or something. And then North Korea becomes the flashpoint. And up until now, we've been focusing on South China Sea and we lose. The eye of the world shifts to the Korean Peninsula. And then China goes in for the kill in South China Sea.
Problem, I think this is the way they have tried to locate with the South Korea and America. Probably the Chinese authorities they did not like it. Indian army is apolitical, whereas the Chinese army is officially a military wing of a Communist Party of China. So ultimately, if this succession takes place, if it does not go with the thing of China, I don't think so. China will be able to put a person of their choice, and if it is not so, they will not allow North Korea to act. It will be the part of the China. So whatever the North Korea is going to do it about the missile explosions, etc., this is all with I would say it is a shadow proxy of the China only.
And
so
once they
keep on going on.
Okay, once they do that, okay, I've got a few minutes left. That begs the Gautam Mukherjee the question. There is X we can do and there's X we can't do, right? There are in South China Sea. I mean, the Aussies have sent a ship, and we can talk about it. But military intervention by India in the South China Sea is not going to be an easy thing to do. We have a strong navy, but we can do some ancillary support. So, what the question then comes down to: what is it that we can do as this now great game plays out in Southeast Asia?
Well, the South China Sea is a body of water, and to sort of cut it off is not easy. Whereas the Malacca Straits is a choke point. It's like a chicken neck. If that is, and the Indian Navy is pretty active over there. And if we and the allies, being America, Australia, the Quad, for a start, do something in the Malacca Straits, then whatever is out there in the Indian Ocean is well and good, but they can't get back in. You see, China is not blessed with ports. It's got very long lines of communication. If they want to go to Gwadar, then how do they get out of the Strait of Hormuz? if they want to, take over the South China Sea. It concerns Australia because 70% of its shipping goes through the South China Sea and on to Australia. It is a major shipping lane and it will be kept open, but China can't take it as such and keep it. It can flex its muscles.
Well, they
now,
are
but it can be prevented from going west if the Malacca Straits are blocked, and it's quite easy to block.
Okay, so that begs the question, Ambassador Goyal, that now do we need a global agreement? And I'm going to come back later in the evening and have this conversation. But now do we need a global agreement on certain things, a new Wilson's 14 points, to be had in the event China goes in for a lot of these places?
Rishabh, at the moment, my gut feeling would be that given the pandemic which is already going on in the world, when China's economy is contracting by 6.8%, when India itself is fighting the pandemic here, and so are other countries, military options are going to be the last things on the mind of anyone really. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they probably would be the last thing. What I do foresee happening really is that it becomes a strategic contest between the USA and China, where South Korea will have an important role to play, and we will have to then wait and watch how it evolves. I don't think that any country would allow it to become so volatile that it turns into a military confrontation. It's a bit far-fetched.
There are certain people who are pointing out the fact that at least 2 US aircraft carriers have big outbreaks of coronavirus on them. And if you wanted to do something, this is the time to do it. Because I believe, I think Theodore Roosevelt, the captain, was recently sacked because he wanted help of the coronavirus outbreak on his own ship. So that's one aircraft carrier pretty much, I won't say out of commission, but in a crisis, not in a position to fight war at this point of time. Gautam Mukherjee, there's X we can do, and as I mentioned, there's X we can't do. In stated policy, how much do we have to sit out? Because let's face it, the Americans, the Japanese, and the South Koreans and the Aussies are going to have to brunt most of this. Should we be in conversation with them for a public agreement on certain things?
I think we already are. I think we have made some comments about them bringing their ships too close to the Indian shores. We've warned them off, and we've made noises that the South China Sea is open. The stated position of the allies in the West that this is a thoroughfare and China can't occupy it. They're not really going any further than that. Nobody is at the moment. They are sending their ships up and down it, and that's about the length and breadth of it. Similarly, China is saber rattling but not going any further. My own guess is China cannot afford a war, because one of the points that hasn't been mentioned so far is the nature of their economy. Their nature of their
is trade based, but who knows if there has been, and I can't tell you that sitting here, but if there has been, or if the Politburo feels, of Xi Jinping feels, that after coronavirus they've had a lot of credibility loss internally and they require a grand distraction. There's nothing like going and occupying the South China Sea, creating a problem there, or aiming for Taiwan to make people forget about what happened or the messes that happened in coronavirus. Sumit Peer, what should we be concerned about? I'll leave the last word with Professor Nalapat.
Taiwan is covert nuclear. I mean, it's
it is. It's just like the Israelis are supposed to be.
They can't do much.
Let Sumit take that, sir. Sumit, what should we concern ourselves with?
Rishabh, Chinese intentions are very clear. 2 years back, they made their first aircraft carrier in Dalian. They have set a factory to accelerate the production of aircraft carriers. This is the only country in the world which has set a factory which will reduce the time to 1/3. So they are increasing the aircraft carriers. They are trying to match their submarines to the US submarines number-wise. So China is preparing an international alliance, needs to protect the South China Sea and the areas around it. the faster we do the alliance with US and all the interested countries, the better we are, because no country individually can handle China with its interest, economic and political or whatever. An international alliance is the answer, and that alliance will be the answer to the China. India has to facilitate that, because China's intentions for India are very well known. Let's not befool ourselves. We know what they are up to. Look at the numbers. They are building up their armada. If we don't see that, we are stupid not to see that.
No, we do see that. So the question then becomes, I'm out of time. Professor Nalapad, last word. The last great contest between the Russians and the Americans, we tried to sit it out until 71, when we realized that because of the endemic support that was being offered by Nixon and company to Yahya, including threatening of sending the 7th Fleet into the Bay of Bengal, that we had to go in for Russian support. And that support did come our way. We did win that particular war, and dismemberment of Pakistan did happen. How much of this great game, but we were a much weaker power then. 50, 60 years later, we are a much bigger power. How much can we sit out, and how much should we get involved in?
Well, Rishabh, frankly, I don't think we can sit it out. I think we have to decide. There are two major military formations in the world today. One is the Sino-Russian alliance, a very formidable alliance. And we are talking about, for example, Taiwan having nuclear capacity. I haven't heard that. The Japanese are a screwdriver away from a nuclear bomb, but I haven't heard that about Taiwan. In the South China Sea, the Chinese Navy is expanding. The Chinese are setting up artificial islands. They are fortifying those islands. And after a time, in about 8 to 10 years or 12 years, there'll be so many of these artificial islands and Chinese installations that in effect, the Chinese will be masters of the South China Sea. So the reality is they are playing a game. And as far as India is concerned, we are perpetually on the fence. We are neither here nor there. We love, we love everybody. Now the only point is, when you love everybody, everybody loves us back, but not very much. So I think we need to choose our allies very carefully. There are two fronts available. One with the Sino-Russian alliance, and the other where the Americans are a major partner. And we have to decide which of these is our natural ally.
I think that decision time perhaps is closer than we think. I'm out of time. We take a break. We put this into perspective, because what is happening in North Korea is just not about Kim Jong-un and the fascination of what happens when a military regime like his falls or does a transition of power. There is an immediate bearing on all of us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.